thank you, everyone, all my VIPs that are joining live, and anyone that's watching this recording on our journal on baguetteandbutter.com. Thank you for clicking the button and joining. If you guys know me, you know I love Disney and I'm cheesy. So, of course, I'm going to play The Little Mermaid when we're talking about fish today. So I have Marsh. He is online. He is waiting to pop up and say hello to everybody. But I just really wanted to take a second and just talk about Clarified TV just because this is the first one and I'm super excited. So I really wanted to be able to create this platform to really debunk all of our curiosities in how to be able to cook more sustainably, source more sustainably, and just make it easier for us to gain this information. And for me, I've had constant people that have been inspired by the work that I do and all of the things that I challenge myself to learn to be able to teach other people. And I know there's many things I don't know how to do, and there's many things and the pivots of sustainability in those specialties and in those crafts that I'll never know about, or I never really know how to be able to teach people on my platform. So I wanted to be able to create and curate a platform that would give you these experts and will be able to tell their opinion and be able to tell their expertise from this platform. And I thought it was great because a lot of times in the city, we don't really have access to be able to speak with our farmers, or in this case, our fishermen and even sustainable change makers and things like that, since we're all over the world. So I wanted to be able to bring something online that could create a powerful space where we're able to chat and to talk about and create a transparency for all of us to understand where our food comes from and how we can create a discussion on how to make it more just sustainable, simple, and easy for everyone to access. So I want to give a shout out to all my VIPs. This is a live event right now. If you're watching the recording later, you will get bits and pieces of this, but some of it will be cut out. They help fund this actual call to be able to happen, for us to be able to talk to our live attendees and be able to interview them. So without further ado, we're going to be talking with Marsh today from Sitka Salmon Share. So I'm going to pop him up on the screen so that we can share and speak with him. And then I do have some notes on the side, so if you see my eyes shifting, don't worry, I'm with you guys. I'm just trying to keep on track, because also, if you know me, you know I like to ramble, so I got to keep on track. So let's bring Marsh up to the screen. See if I did this right.
All right, there I am.
There we go. Hello.
Ooh, I'm gonna turn a little bit out of the light.
1 second.
Hello?
I can hear you. Can everyone else hear him?
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, that's weird.
They can.
There we go.
Uh-oh.
All right, we're good to go. And everyone else can still hear me. Cool. Good. Awesome. It's so great to finally see you in person. I know we've emailed for for eons now. So
Yeah.
I'm so super happy that you decided to sign up and to talk sustainable seafood and just even sourcing fish, cooking fish. And I'd love if you have any backstory on Sitka Salmon Shares and yourself as becoming a fisherman. That would be an awesome way to kind of kickstart.
Yeah. Thanks for the intro. I grew up. My dad's a commercial fisherman, so I grew up in the what we call the bush in Alaska. So it's like off the road, in a tiny little town that you had to take a float plane or a boat to. And I spent my summers fishing there, and after, so I went to school for other stuff. I studied Spanish and worked in kitchens and did other things. Was a social worker for a while, but I'd always kind of fished on the side. And one of the driving passions for me in my life has always been like getting together and sharing food. So I was trying to organize these dinner parties with all the best food people in town I knew, and I happened to meet a guy who was working on his PhD. In kind of food sustainability, but more than that, we were just friends over like the love of great food. And that was right around my mid-20s, right when I bought my first boat. And he was just finishing up his PhD. So right at that time, he got his first teaching job in Illinois at Knox College in Galesburg. And I sent him some fish down for like a benefit dinner for a environmental nonprofit. So everyone loved the fish, and he and some students were like, "Oh, this is cool. Let's do this like a little side project in the summertime." So then the next year I sent him more fish down. Then I was able to go down and meet the people that got my fish. And to me, is like someone who really loves food and really loves great ingredients and like the provenance meaning so much and taste and flavor and why things are special. It really connected with me to be able to meet the people that get my fish and have them really be excited, because if you're a fisherman and you sell fish to a large fish company, it just goes on a global commodity. So you're hook and line salmon fishing, delivering all these really beautiful fish that you just did so much work for to make sure they're perfect, and then they just get sold as a global commodity. You don't know where they go. You have little control of the price. So for me, it was like, ooh, I can make a better price for my fish, and these people are super excited about it. Like, this is really awesome. So I bought into the company then, and have been helping kind of organize the Alaska side, and lived in the Midwest for a few years, and been helping build the company ever since. That was in 2012 too, so we've been around a little bit. Yeah.
That's awesome. So then one of the big things I wanted to be able to talk about, because a lot of people ask me a lot about CSAs and CSF. I'm going to say that wrong.
Mm-hmm. No, you got it. You nailed it.
Yeah, I know. That's because I got the notes. That's the only reason why. But I love to be able to talk a little bit more on just how that works for people, because I know even just not only how it works, but also how people can pivot into doing it, because it's always a different mindset when you're used to going to a grocery store all the time and sourcing something versus having something that's kind of almost bulk or delivered to you. That just kind of, if you can discuss a little bit on how that works for people.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's you have to be kind of trusting of the source to sign up and get a bunch of fish delivered to you in the mail. I think why I would sign up if I were to live in the Midwest and wasn't a fisherman and didn't have good access myself, is that the fish you get in the grocery store is oftentimes mislabeled. It's often just old. It's not, there's no connection to the producer. So there's no real incentive for the fishermen catching those fish to take better care of their fish. And it takes too long on the supply chain. There's not as much accountability, and you're going to get old, smellier fish, or fish that's caught in, on slave boats where it's like really ecologically, socially unacceptable the conditions of some of the fisheries in the world. So like, so getting a CSF from us is, where the fish is coming from, who caught the fish, what species it is. And then we have our own totally integrated supply chain where we're, it sounds kind of corporate, but we can control the whole process from fishermen owners. So fishermen that have bought in, that really get taking care of the fish, to our own processing plant, which I'm up in Sitka right now. And we're running the fish plant 24 hours a day right now. So we can cut through the fish quickly, because our fishermen deliver this really perfect fish. So we have to be able to fillet it and blast freeze it at 50 below as fast as possible before there's any decline in quality. So, I mean, going to your local fish market's great if you're like in Alaska or even Seattle, maybe, or, somewhere in Italy on vacation or something. But like Chicago, you don't have a good local fish market. You don't have that good supply. So this is like I get my coffee. I order coffee in Alaska. Like, there's no like good grocery store to get good coffee here. It's all super over roasted and gross. I order online and get it, and I'm happy with it. But like, I think it's the same thing. Like, you don't have access to good fish. This is the best fish because of how it's handled and how the fisheries are managed, and then all the processing steps we do to try to like take that perfect fish and deliver it to someone.
Yeah, and I know. So you guys have a few different farmers market pop-ups. I actually have some fish in my fridge now from the farmers market. But then you are in other parts of other states. Can you explain the other states? And then you do delivery as well, correct?
Yeah, so I mean, the bulk of our we do farmers markets just to kind of get the word out for the CSF, for the community supported fishery. But and we do farmers markets all over Chicago. So we have a really big farmers market program. It's a great way for people to get a chance to try the fish. So it's like it's a I don't know if I would sign up for something that was hundreds of dollars to like get multiple months of seafood if I never had the fish, didn't know about it. But I think, once someone has a piece of fish from a farmer's market and then they come back and it's like, why is that fish so good? That's what we're going for. And so yeah, we're all over Chicago. Pretty much every farmer's market that we can think of. Not Green City's the only one that hasn't let us in yet because we're not local. The fish isn't local, but
Uh,
and then
you're
we
in
do
other parts of the Midwest too, though, right?
yeah, we have a brand new hub in Madison that's we're excited about. We've always kind of been in more kind of commercial, like not cool warehouse areas, but we have there's like a food hub, so an old feed mill that's been rehabilitated with a bunch of like food producers in there. So we're moving into there this month, which I'm excited about. But we deliver out of there. We have a Naperville hub. We deliver out of Chicago, and then we have in Galesburg we ship shares. So now we can ship fish nationally now. So
Okay.
anywhere in the lower 48. But in the Midwest, we do our own home delivery. So our own cars, our own vehicles, our own drivers, so we can really control that, from the boat directly to your doorstep.
That's awesome. That's cool. Let me see what else I have on here. Also, I'm farsighted, so I can't read anything. I already talked about that. So you've been fishing for a long time. What do you think, in your opinion, has been the highest point and the lowest point? Like, what's your favorite parts of fishing, and I guess your most annoying parts of the
I
process?
mean, people ask like similar questions, like what's it like, and I feel like the real answer is like it's mercurial. You have your highs that are really high. You might find a bunch of really big beautiful fish, and you might, on a super good day you might make $4,000, and you're just like you're high lining, so you're catching more fish than all your friends, and you just feel like a hero, and you're like, all right, I'm the king of the world. And then that can be very short lived, and then later that night it might, while you're anchored up and behind a little island, an unexpected storm might blow up. So then you just stay up all night long. Instead of sleeping, you stay up all night long, hoping your boat doesn't watching to make sure your boat doesn't drag anchor and drift into the rocks. Or you have you're driving your boat trying to get to town and get these fish back to town in the middle of the night, and some alarm goes off, and it's like panic, what's happening, uh, so it's like it's definitely on the extremes, the experiences. But I think like the favorite to me is after going through all that hardship of like being in the wind and the waves and fishing really hard, then and coming back to town with a really nice load of fish that like you treated really perfectly, and it's overcoming all that adversity and then like delivering, having this big load of beautiful salmon is like pretty awesome feeling.
Yeah, I think that's amazing to
Yeah.
be able to know how much work goes behind that and know that you actually enjoy doing it versus someone that may be doing it just because.
I mean, I think fishermen, like the fishing we do is not like, it's not super lucrative. It's more like people really love the lifestyle, and really it's not about just getting rich. It's like they just want to kind of sustain the type of fishing they do and their lifestyle, and it's being out in a really beautiful, pristine place. It's really in the summertime, there's like tourists in town and it's like kind of hectic. And then just to get out on the ocean and be out there with the whales and birds, and like it's much nicer.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have yet to actually go fishing, and that's one of my bucket list things to do. So I'm hoping it will one day happen. We'll see. But so then, can we talk a little bit about the typical chain of seafood? I know we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but kind of what does the typical seafood chain look like versus what we kind of talked about with Sitka, with it being a little bit easier to control?
Yeah, so I mean, typical would be more farm salmon based on like what Americans eat, which I think the sad part is it often arrives in like say in a grocery store. If you're using grocery stores for your fish, it arrives in a fresher. It arrives fresher because they can control how many they catch or they harvest out of the farm, and meter those out through production and go right to retail.
Mm-hmm.
So that you've got a worse quality from a health, taste, environmental standpoint, but it's less degraded from temperature and time damage. The challenge, I think, with wild salmon is that, some of like if you see wild sockeye salmon from Bristol Bay, they caught 42 million sockeye salmon this year in that region of Alaska. So just like so many fish in a very short time in a very remote region of Alaska. So it's like, it's really hard to have all those fish handled really perfectly when it's like that much volume coming in so quickly. But the typical supply chain would be, so fish plant the fisherman sells to a fish plant that goes to like a wholesaler. That wholesaler then sells it to a maybe national distributor. That could go, it could go maybe one or two levels of distributor, but wholesaler, distributor, retailer, customer. So that's like at the bare minimum. You have like, three separate people in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that all it takes is one dishonest person to be like, ooh, Copper River sockeye, or to mislabel something. Why does fish mislabeled? Because you can sell it for more by just changing the name, and people often don't know. I mean, they do all those studies on it, and there's always mislabeled fish, but it's hard to. The general public isn't knowledgeable enough to be able to tell mislabeled seafood.
Yeah.
So that has the problem is mislabeling. I think the money that the fisherman gets. So, or if the fisherman sells a silver coho salmon, same ones we have in the Great Lakes, or the same ones we catch, but they're in the ocean. If they sell that coho salmon for $2 a pound, that's not the filleted weight. That's a whole fish weight. So maybe the whole fish is cost around like once you fillet it, like $3.50 a pound for the meat. That gets sold in the Whole Foods for $17.99 a pound. So the fisherman's getting like, $3 $3.50 a pound for like the fillet. And
after all those hours of work.
Yeah, and well, it's like, to me, the fisherman and the person buying the fish are the two most important parties. So, I mean, you do have the fish plant. Somebody has to fillet it. Somebody has to freeze it or ship it and stuff. But those entities, it's in their interest to buy the fish for the cheapest and sell it for the most. So, they're trying to keep fish prices down and be able to move a lot of it, and then they just make money for moving fish. So there's not really a connection. Like, I think with any food, having a closer connection to the producer is where you find the best quality, just like produce and anything. So if you don't have any connection to the fisherman, where's the feedback? Where's the accountability and quality? Like, how do you, make sure that this fisherman is taking really good care of his fish or their fish? And you don't really have that, and you have like this supply chain that's untraceable. There's no accountability.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's always been the interesting part before I knew about Sitka, was just not like, you knew that there was like wild salmon or wild fish and farm fish, but after that it was just this kind of void of where, like, what was before that, I guess. So it's really refreshing to actually have that source that you can track it. And that's one of the things I love about not even just being able to follow you guys on social media, but just any farmer, is that you have way more transparency, that you're actually able to watch this process. Like, because I follow both accounts. I follow you and Sitka, and to watch actually you guys like catching things and breaking it down. And so you kind of see this behind the scenes of what's happening with your food, which is amazing, which you can't do that anywhere else. Like, you can't look for your Whole Foods salmon somewhere and get the whole picture and the story.
No, not at all.
So I think actually we talked about this already too. Well, I'll ask it for the heck of it. Maybe you've got a different perspective, but so Sitka often speaks about transparency and their supply chain and the fish that you guys catch. What are a couple ways that large industrial fisheries lack transparency when it comes to like consumer purchasing of any kind of fish?
I just think it's there's no really accountability to what you're buying at the retail level. Of what you're buying is what you sell, and so it's like, whose fault is it? Is it the distributor? Is it the wholesaler? Is it the fish plant that processed it initially? I mean, there's kind of, the whole thing is opaque. They just want to move huge lots of fish, a volume of fish, to make money. So I feel like that their whole system is not set up for any kind of accountability, traceability, and not to say that like all fish is mislabeled and it's all horrible. I just think that supply chain doesn't yield you good quality fish, and it's not really good for fishermen or either.
Yeah. And yeah, I feel like we're dipping on all of these questions before I get to them, but it's all right. So we talked a little bit about wild caught versus farm raised. One of the questions that I kind of wanted to ask a little bit more on the farm raised side is there, I know there's obviously a difference in the diet, but what does farm raised fish typically have to eat? Like, what do they actually feed farm raised fish?
The challenging part about that is that so you've got a feed conversion ratio, like the amount of food it takes to make a pound of fish, right? Like beef is pretty bad, chicken's a little bit better, fish are a little bit better than that even, but they need wild fish to be fed wild fish. So really, it's like, it's not like you're saving fish by buying farm salmon because they're grinding up anchovies from Peru and making fish meal out of it. And when they try to get away from that or have a better feed conversion ratio, it's often a lot of corn and soy. So you add that in there, and then you have all the kind of problems with the American diet, having too many omega-6s, and not the people are trying to eat salmon to be healthy and have omega-3s, and you have a lot of the kind of the reasons why we have too many omega-6s in our diet anyways, from the corn and soy. So you got that.
Anyway.
Versus a wild salmon that's just on the ocean eating other little fish. So it's like, it's really a pure, like, incredible ingredient based on its diet.
In theory, it technically would save more fish, wouldn't it? Because they're just kind of eating what they need to eat versus a farm place actually like importing all of these like anchovies to use up for feed.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely really destructive salmon fish, but there's like better and worse, and there's British Columbia is really bad because it's like right on the wild salmon migration, like where the wild salmon go while they're little fry, the baby salmon swim out in the ocean, and where they come back to go to the streams and rivers. So to have a bunch of salmon farms there means you have a bunch of like sea lice and parasites, and they have a bunch of diseases. It's very unregulated. So like, that's really bad for wild salmon. Whereas in some regions, like, New Zealand, or Southern Hemisphere, they don't have any wild salmon. So it's like, you're not really messing with wild salmon. I think the argument that, you're saving wild salmon by like taking the pressure off of wild stocks doesn't really apply to Alaska because of how our fisheries are managed. So that's frustrating to hear when Salmon Farm kind of marketing uses that, because every major salmon river in Alaska, every stream has counters in it, literally counting, electronic, and people on a big tower counting the fish that are going to spawn. So if there's not enough going to spawn, they think they can sustain future runs, they'll like shut down all the commercial fishing. So it's like very tightly regulated. It's like, it's in Alaska's constitution, it's the sustainability of salmon and seafood. So really, there's no like, oh, the market's hot this year, let's catch all the salmon. That does not happen in Alaska. But can we feed the whole world is the question. And no, we can't feed the whole world with wild salmon. So, yes, there'll be some fish farming. I guess I would always hope it would be done better, that consumers demand kind of better quality. But a lot of it's just kind of like flashy marketing, and this craft farmed salmon is so great. I see a lot of, since Amazon took over Whole Foods, their fishmonger guy is like oh, actually farm salmon's better than wild if it's done right. And you're like, well, that came from Amazon. Great. Why you tell me about that, fish guy. But so I mean, I think it can be done right. It's better. I mean, shellfish is obviously the best one, like mussels and clams and oysters. But then there's some fish that are just easy to farm, tilapia, that do really well. So I don't know. I think there's more and more demand for better fish and from an ecological standpoint. So I think that'll keep driving better fish farms. But I think like if you care about like the taste and health, I would go wild.
I think that should be a good catchphrase. Just like hashtag go wild. Let me see where I'm at. So you talked about blast frozen already, but just kind of to kind of pick a focal point on that of why blast frozen is better than fresh, because you talked about having the farm fresh salmon, and even though it's fresh, it's not necessarily the best option.
Well, I think understanding how perishable fish is, it like has to be kept super cold. And it's the first stage of we're hook and line. Most of our salmon are hook and line, so it's like individually handled, bled, gilled and gutted, like all the blood removed, immediately put on slush ice. So like the best handling you could possibly do. And even if you do that, the first stage of decline will happen at 5 to 7 days. Like the first, like, oh, it's a little bit softer, it's a little bit fishier. So you have to give the fishermen enough time to like go out and catch their fish. Their boats are slow. They go like 6 or 7 miles an hour. So it's like, even though Sitka's close to the fishing grounds, it's like they can't be coming in every day, or else they'd be spend half their time running the boat. So, I mean, we tried it just logistically getting all the fish in from this like ideal place to be harvesting salmon, hook and line in Sitka, Alaska. Just try to get all the fish in a timely manner before it degrades at all. Here in Sitka is its own challenge. So let alone shipping that around the country. And we have fishermen owners, so fishermen that have bought in, that like really care about quality, that really get it, and want that feedback. If their fish is like at all, they want to be delivering perfect fish. So I think just understanding, like, just to get the fish in Sitka is its own challenge of like getting perfect fish in, let alone having that go through all these chains and then sit in a fresh case for days and days. And we have a device that can like test the decline in fish and like how old it is. And in 2016, we tested around Chicago, a bunch of markets, wild salmon, and it was coho salmon, one of the fish we sell that we're catching right now. And it was 14.2 days old was the average. So it's like, I'd much rather have a fish that's blast frozen and that's 2 or 3 days old than I would a 14. I would not eat a 14-day-old piece of fish. It'd smell gross.
Yeah. I think it's weird too, because you notice that, at least I go into Whole Foods, is the more common market now, and they will take previously frozen fish and thaw it out in their case, which I feel like is making it like
it's worse. It's
So you think you have a few days by the time you're eating it, but by then it might be almost 2.5 weeks old, and are frozen and defrosted, frozen again.
Yeah, I mean I don't really like that. Like look like it's fresh, and degrade day after day. It's like not smart. I mean, if you're gonna buy it, it's frozen. Buy it frozen and slack it when you want it. I think the freezing process is something that we take really seriously. We started off with when I was fishing full time, all like about what we can do on the boat, like how it's handled, was the main thing. Like, okay, well, we got to pressure bleed, we got to do all these short trips, we got to do all this stuff, but then you give it to a fish plant, and then it's like, okay, it's blast frozen. Well, what does that mean? And like in Alaska in general, that means put into a big freezer at 20 or 30 below. It's like better than your home freezer, but then they shut the doors, and in the morning it's like, oh, everything's frozen. Cool, it's blast frozen at 30 below. But it's not really looking at like the dynamics of like how do you really freeze fish quickly, and that's like as cool as temperature as possible with maximum airflow. So we engineered freezers that have like these small little, we call them pods, but these little freezer rooms that have like a big powerful fan that runs the whole length of the the freezer and blows this 50 below air like directly through the fish. So it's freezing fish in a little over an hour and like 15 minutes is our average right now. So what does that mean? It means texturally you have that like delicate, soft mouth feel you have with fresh fish. It's not like that. If you freeze fish in your home freezer or get a crummy freeze on it, it's kind of chewy. Maybe you like have lots of liquid. It's just like, it's damaged. The cells are burst from like the ice crystals forming. So, we think that's really cool and the best way to freeze. And then, you could have bad frozen fish if the fish was bad to start out with. Maybe it was old already, it was bloody, it wasn't handled well on the boat, it wasn't chilled properly, and then you give it an okay freeze, and it's like it's not going to be good fish. So, we're trying to take the best fish and really put it through a really powerful freeze, so like that it's locked in. So when you slack it out, and I know from like if people have fish that they froze in their home freezer, I'm like, I guess I'll eat it if there's nothing else. But when I have stuff that we've frozen in our freezer, I'm like excited about it. Like, ooh, this is going to be really good. So
yeah, from personal experience, it is really good. Like I think I've almost had at least everything from, I haven't actually purchased into the share yet. That's one of our next phases. We've kind of been slowly getting ready, and honestly, we're trying to just get a deep freezer so we can just buy like full animals and things.
Yeah.
But, we've been buying it from the market, and we've just been like cycling through different things. We have the prawns with paella not too long ago, and
yum.
salmon and the cod that's in there now. So it's definitely. I'm not even just advertising. I'm speaking from experience. It's really good. So.
All right, I love to hear it.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's one of those things where a lot of people think like, you're advertising or you're just saying it just because, but it's honestly, you can tell the difference, and to be able to know where your food comes from, I feel like you can connect to it even though you weren't actually there for the whole process, versus if you go to a store and it's just, there's no energy exchange of like somebody took care of this for you, and I feel like you can truly experience that through eating the food at the end of the kind of the chain, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us. I'm so happy. And I will post, I know there was a couple questions on there about the website and everything like that. So this will be posted later once I edit it on baguetteandbutter.com/journal, so everyone can view the interview for free. It won't have the Q&A part at the end because that's for the lovely VIPs, but we will definitely have all that information on there, and I'm super thankful for you to join us. And
yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
it's been fun.
Awesome. Well, we will talk soon. I'm gonna sign off and jam out. And if anyone else has any follow-up questions, you can have a type it on the side, and I'm sure that you'll hear more from us later. Maybe we can do another call with cooking fish one day. And
definitely. Definitely. I'm practicing up right now every day.
Awesome.
All right. Bye, Amanda.
Bye. What's the best ways of storing fish? I know it's pretty simple to take it from freezer to freezer, but maybe just kind of like talking about defrosting it and going about just kind of keeping it in its best state when you have that.
I think overnight in the fridge is the way I usually do it. You're not supposed to let it get above 38 degrees.